And when you do your Google search, what is the highest testosterone levels in an animal, you'll see that a single bull shark caught off the coast of the United States of America had a whopping, a super high total testosterone concentration of. Vigorous Steve here. Have you ever wondered where we rank amongst the animal kingdom regarding our total testosterone concentrations? Well, I have. I was doing research for an upcoming video regarding the overall decline of serum testosterone levels over the last couple of decades, and then it hit me. What about the animals? Where do they rank amongst the humans? What are their total testosterone levels? What about silverback gorillas or grizzly bears or African lions? So I went down the rabbit hole, pun intended, and I did a ton of research. And I found a lot of scientific evidence regarding the total testosterone levels of all kinds of animals. Now, this list is not going to be complete because, of course, there's millions of species of animals on this planet. Still, all of the popular animals are represented. Before we get into the video, I want to know from you guys what your favorite animal is. What animal do you identify most with? And then you can do a head-on-head comparison comparing your individual testosterone levels to the average testosterone levels of your spirit animal, so to say. Leave a like on this video, another comment to help boost the algorithm. Subscribe if you're not subscribed already. Let's get into it. Now, again, I had to do a ton of research, guys. You have to keep in mind that this is going through all kinds of scientific literature that is performed over the last couple of decades. So some of the scientific literature is going to be reasonably old. Some of them are from the 1960s. Some are quite recent, from the last couple of years, and they're using all kinds of different methods of analysis to establish total testosterone concentrations. So I focus solely on scientific evidence that has been performed in the wild, and otherwise I will specifically mention that some of these total testosterone levels are coming from animals kept in captivity, in zoos, for example. Keep in mind that the methods of analysis to determine total testosterone concentrations in serum aren't always specified in the scientific evidence that I was able to review. Sometimes they specifically mention that they use electrochemiluminescence immunoassays or chemiluminescence microparticle immunoassays to determine total testosterone concentrations, but I haven't seen a single study that actually uses liquid chromatography tandem mass spectrometry testing, which is generally what we recommend for humans to do their blood work with. Right, that's the most accurate way to check your total testosterone levels. So I haven't seen that in any of the studies, probably because it's a lot more expensive, and sometimes the sample size reaches into the thousands of different animals, and sometimes they only determine the total testosterone levels of a single animal, or maybe 5 at most. Keep in mind, a lot of this research has been done in the wild. Sometimes they can't even take an actual serum sample. They have to go with blood that is found on a wound, for example, and then they use a 7-foot pole to kind of scrape a little bit of blood off the wound and then run that through an ECLIA or CMIA test that is portable. So there's a lot of variability, right? Keep that in mind. Sometimes they use picograms per milliliter, sometimes they use nanograms per milliliter, but I converted everything to nanograms per deciliter to make it a little bit more relatable and easier to understand, because that is, generally speaking, the reference range and the concentrations that we see on our own blood work results. Now, unfortunately, I didn't have the time yet to convert the nanograms per deciliter to nanomoles per liter. I might still do that, but I'm not entirely sure if that's even going to fit on the screen. So don't hold it against me if you don't see nanomoles per liter on the screen. I'm just going to focus on nanograms per deciliter. Again, that's what most of the world uses nowadays. So where do we start? Let's start talking about humans first, because that's what we're all familiar with. So I purely focused on human adults, Homo erectus. The reference range for adults is 240.0 to 950.0 nanograms per deciliter. And keep in mind, on some reference ranges, on some countries, it goes up to 1100 nanograms per deciliter. In other countries, it's only 871 nanograms per deciliter is what I see here in Thailand on my own blood work results. So the reference range is kind of very based on country to country. And of course, in nanomoles per liter, that's going to be a completely different set of values. So this is the reference range for human adults, males, of course. We're going to focus on males in this video. And of course, these ranges are going to change as you get older. That's why we have testosterone replacement therapy. Nowadays, animals can choose for testosterone replacement therapy, albeit that their total testosterone levels go sky high in many cases during the mating season. But for humans, it's basically always mating season, right? We're always ready to mate. We don't have to wait to a particular season when food is aplenty, because for us, our species, we always have food aplenty, or at least in the developed countries. So we have quite average and quite stable total testosterone concentrations over the year. So I took all of the ranges from the animals. I specified the mean, if that was available in the scientific literature. And then sometimes during the mating season, I was able to find very, very high, incredibly high total testosterone levels. So I'll put that on the screen, or I'll mention it specifically. Let's just go down the list. We're starting with the highest total testosterone concentrations ever recorded in an animal of a single bull shark. And when you do your Google search, what is the highest testosterone levels in an animal, you'll see that a single bull shark caught off the coast of the United States of America had a whopping, a super high total testosterone concentration of 35,800 nanograms per deciliter, which is insane. This is probably the highest recorded total testosterone level of all of the vertebrates on this planet. It's still not as high as Dallas McCarver's total testosterone level of 55,000 nanograms per deciliter, as documented in his autopsy report. Again, Dallas McCarver was probably taking performance-enhancing drugs, and this bull shark, I don't think he had access to injectable testosterone, so I think this bull shark wins. Now, this is not the average of sharks, right? Usually the average is a little bit lower, but still, when you look at the averages of sharks, they're still quite the highest of all of the animals on this planet. Nurse and reef sharks have a total testosterone level of approximately 83.1 to 1,000 nanograms per deciliter. Sand tiger sharks are a little bit higher, 140 to 10,340 nanograms per deciliter, with a mean total testosterone concentration of, let's say, 2,860 nanograms per deciliter. And other sharks, right, pulled together, the male lemon, bull, hammerhead, black nose, sandbar, blacktip, and sharp nose sharks, they range anywhere between 2,300 to 7,850 nanograms per deciliter. Mean currently unknown. I wasn't able to determine that from this study. Still, these ranges are incredibly high. So, if you want to be another animal with the highest testosterone levels, choose a shark, bull sharks specifically. Now, that being said, I wasn't able to determine the total testosterone levels from great white sharks. There was a study found, and I'll link all of the studies down below, where they determined the testosterone levels in tissue, in the fins, for example, but that doesn't really represent what the serum total testosterone concentrations are going to be. So unfortunately for great white sharks, I wasn't able to find it, and don't ask anybody to do that study for you, because great white sharks are really, really scary. And unless you want to go swim with them and take their serum samples, we'll leave that entirely up to you. Now, when it comes to Komodo dragons, one of the biggest reptiles living on land, they have a range of 640 to 1,600 nanograms per deciliter during the mating season, with a mean testosterone concentration of 1,325 nanograms per deciliter. So this is already very representative of what you see in teenagers. They go up to about 1,500 nanograms per deciliter. But again, we only have that for a couple of years, and Komodo dragons have this for the majority of their adult life. Royal Bengal tigers, 304 to 1,802 nanograms per deciliter, with a mean total testosterone concentration of 1,084 nanograms per deciliter. This is somewhere bordering on testosterone replacement therapy for humans. A ram, a mean total testosterone concentration of 667.5 nanograms per deciliter. And fifth in this list, and again, it doesn't mean that we're fifth of all of the animal kingdom, just fifth on the list that I was able to generate. And keep in mind, I only spent 2 days comprising this list. If I were to spend a month doing research, I'm sure we could get a different ranking, but we're probably going lower down the list. Humans, a reference range of 240 to 950 nanograms per deciliter. And based on the most recent scientific literature, I was able to determine that the mean total testosterone concentrations for humans, Homo erectus, is 466 nanograms per deciliter for men aged 20 to 50 years old. So that's pretty much prime time for human males, after which total testosterone levels certainly decline. That's generally speaking the most fertile period of your life as a male. So let's take that as a mean 466 nanograms per deciliter, meaning that we're ranked fifth among this list. Now, again, it's not the most complete list, so keep that in mind. I've done a ton more research on other animals, but when we go down the list, we see a lot of our favorite animals. A silverback gorilla, for example, the gorilla, There's a mean total testosterone concentration of 413.7 nanograms per deciliter. So for all of you guys that want to be a silverback gorilla, you would probably feel androgen deficient with that total testosterone concentration. I mean, how many of you guys feel a little bit lethargic, a little bit tired, don't get good pumps, don't get good sleep, then you do your total testosterone level and you see that you're 450 or 500 nanograms per deciliter, and now you're trying to convince yourself to go on TRT. Well, a silverback gorilla actually has a lower total testosterone concentration, and look at that beast. Look at it. These guys, these animals are insane, right? And they're mega strong. They can probably bench press thousands of pounds, can probably easily beat all of the world records if they were to train for a powerlifting meet. Still, their total testosterone levels are not that high. Again, not so much scientific literature, so keep that in mind. I can only work what I was able to find on the internet. Now, a spotted hyena, one of the animals with, I believe, the biggest bite force out of all the animals on the planet, measuring that against crocodiles and some of the other animals, their total testosterone levels are very similar to humans. 30 nanograms per deciliter to 1,050 nanograms per deciliter with a mean level of 400 nanograms per deciliter. So this is very, very close. Doesn't mean that you get to bite into things left and right and show your dominance. Still, it's quite familiar numbers to see after doing all of this research. Going further down the list, an elephant. This is actually very interesting because the highest recorded must of a male Asian elephant housed at the Dixon Park Zoo in Springfield, Missouri, United States of America was 16,000 nanograms per deciliter. For people who are not familiar with musk, it's basically, when the male animals go into a super aggressive mode, where they feel super dominant because their total testosterone levels go mega high, and they start secreting all of these oils and they go completely ballistic. This is one of the reasons why a lot of people that live in countries with elephants know exactly when to avoid the animals, because they go completely nuts. Comparing Asian elephants to African elephants, you see that during non-must, so this is the normal, the off-season, sort of say, the mean total testosterone concentration of an Asian elephant is 261 nanograms per deciliter, but for an African elephant, it's only 5.3 nanograms per deciliter. And during must, an Asian elephant has a mean total testosterone concentration of 2,610 nanograms per deciliter. So this is actually 10 times higher. And it seems very familiar when you compare 261 to 2,610 nanograms per deciliter, but that's what I was able to determine from the scientific literature. You see that the ranges are quite different. So during must of an Asian elephant, it might go up to 4,000 nanograms per deciliter. And when you compare that to the African elephants during must, they have a total testosterone concentration of 664 nanograms per deciliter. So that's significantly less. So for all of you Asians and Africans who like to play the comparison game regarding masculinity, in this unique instance, the Asian elephant wins, especially when kept in captivity, 16,000 nanograms per deciliter. I wonder how much testosterone I would need to inject to get 16,000 nanograms per deciliter. The problem with the reference ranges here in humans, unless you go to a specific lab, there's a cutoff. So for me, for example, if I do my blood work results, I can go up to 3,500 nanograms per deciliter, regardless of the amount of testosterone that I inject. And then above that, they don't register it, right? The machine probably explodes because the total testosterone levels are over 9,000. So when I did my cycle of 2,000 milligrams testosterone NFA per week, I had no idea where my serum testosterone concentrations were. But if I were to multiply, what I was able to get on 1 ampule of testosterone, 250 milligrams per week, getting a total testosterone concentration of about 2,800 nanograms per deciliter the day after a single administration, I would say, based on a little bit of funky calculations, I would hover somewhere around 22,400 nanograms per deciliter, which is higher than an Asian elephant housed in a zoo. Still, I would have to do additional testing for that. I have to go back on cycle of 2,000 milligrams testosterone NFA per week, and then fly to another country where they have the testing equipment to actually determine if my total testosterone levels are actually that freaking high. Still, it was probably the best cycle I ever did. So for the animals that have super high total testosterone levels, Steve can relate. A domesticated rabbit has a mean total testosterone level of 256 nanograms per deciliter. And most of the domesticated animals actually have similar total testosterone levels of around 200 to 250 nanograms per deciliter. A southern elephant seal, which is a huge seal, the biggest seal you'll be able to find on this planet. And it's a very funny comparison when you compare the male elephant seal to a female elephant seal. The male is so big that they literally squash the females during intercourse. It's quite obscene. Don't do what the southern elephant seals do. Don't get morbidly obese. Don't get sleep apnea while you're still awake because you're that fat. Still, the total testosterone levels range from 50 to 1700 nanograms per deciliter during the mating season, with a mean of only, the majority of the year, 237.5 nanograms per deciliter. So again, during the mating season, your total testosterone levels might be super, super high, close to super physiological TRT++, I would say. But is it worth it, when you have that body type? I would say not. Deer also go very, very high. There was a lot of data about white-tailed deer, and it's probably because white-tailed deer are generally hunted in a lot of countries all over the world. And the scientific literature goes back really, really far. So during older studies of the 1970s and 1980s, during the mating season, they were able to determine that serum concentrations of the white-tailed deer range anywhere between 1330 to 2,432 nanograms per deciliter. Still, when you put all of the scientific evidence together, the mean total testosterone levels of white-tailed deer are 221.3 nanograms per deciliter, which is significantly less compared to red deer with a mean level of 352.7 nanograms per deciliter. Still, the deer rank quite high, I would say, certainly higher than a rhinoceros. Also a big surprise to me. And what was funny about this study, and again, it's linked down below, guys, if you want to read it for yourself. In this study, they compared black rhinoceros versus white rhinoceros and assessed their total testosterone concentrations based on how many females were present and also how many males were present. So it seems that total testosterone levels go higher as there's more females or males around, meaning that they can have more sexual partners and probably more other males to spar with and assess their dominance over. So when there's more than 3 females present, which is where the highest testosterone levels were observed, the black rhinoceros has a level of 61 to 178 nanograms per deciliter, and a white rhinoceros is a little bit higher, 94.5 to 223.4 nanograms per deciliter. Again, only when there's 3 females present. When there's no females present, these total testosterone levels are significantly lower. Same for no other males present, very low total testosterone concentration. So if you're a rhino, you identify with a rhino, make sure you have a big social circle. This way, you have the highest total testosterone levels, still far lower than humans. And I found an interesting study that showed that the dehorning of a male rhinoceros only affects fecal testosterone concentrations in negligible amounts. Now, this doesn't make it right to go around start dehorning rhinoceros because you know that their total testosterone concentrations are going to stay the same, right? You still need your weapon, your primary source of masculinity, to show dominance over the other males. So I don't think that's the right thing to do for, the trinket market, or even worse, as a male libido enhancer, which is usually where these horns end up at. So please, hopefully this video can make you put an end to that. And if not, you're a total scumbag. Moving on, a cock has a total testosterone concentration, a mean total testosterone concentration of 122.2 nanograms per deciliter. We're talking about roosters, hens, male chickens, that is. So yes, you can pull that joke. Somebody asks you, what is your total testosterone concentration? Well, you can say, my cock, assuming you have one at home, has a mean testosterone concentration of 122.2 nanograms per deciliter. Still quite low. You could say that your cock is androgen deficient. A grizzly bear ranges from 10 nanograms per deciliter to 112.5 nanograms per deciliter. And it seems that salmon availability and consumption actually lowers serum testosterone levels. So there could be fluctuations revolving around the mating season, or simply meaning that if you solely eat salmon in your diet, assuming you're a grizzly bear, this is not good for your total testosterone levels. So even though it looks good on paper to eat a lot of salmon, if you only eat salmon, that's no bueno. An African lion, even lower. 46 to 144 nanograms per deciliter with a mean total testosterone level of only 96. 96 nanograms per deciliter for all of you guys who identify as a lion. 96 nanograms per deciliter, man. My heart is broken, honestly, because I think lions are alpha as fuck. But with this total testosterone level, assuming that these studies are correct, you know, pitiful, I would say. Still, lions are very strong, very alpha. If you were to meet a lion and your experience point shows that you have 1500 nanograms per deciliter in your serum and the lion only has 96 or maybe up to 144 nanograms per deciliter, guess what? Lion wins. Indian leopards, a little bit higher ranges than the African lion, but still the mean level is a little bit lower, 89.4 nanograms per deciliter, which is actually very close to domesticated cats with a mean total testosterone concentration of 83.0 nanograms per deciliter. Now keep in mind that the studies performed on African lions and Indian leopards were all done in captivity. I'm assuming that it's never been done in the wild, or at least I wasn't able to find these studies performed in the wild. So could be, you know, a logical conclusion, because who wants to be the guy that goes out into the wild starting taking samples, blood samples of lions and leopards, praying to whatever religion they believe in that they're not going to get maimed. So lions, leopards, and domesticated cats, quite close. Subclinical androgen deficient levels compared to humans, but again, for them, it seems to work quite well. And then the lowest on this list, something I didn't expect, is a wolf. And it seems that free-roaming wolves, wild wolves, have a lower testosterone concentration than wolves in captivity. And it's probably due to a high-stress environment, right? A lot of competition amongst the wolf, even though they're pack animals. There must be a lot of different groups of wolves trying to compete for the same area. So free-roaming wolves have a total testosterone level of 0.8 to 351.6 nanograms per deciliter during the mating season, right? The higher levels are all during the mating season. But the mean total testosterone is only 33.0 nanograms per deciliter. And compare that to wolves in captivity, they have 137.5 nanograms per deciliter, probably because their lives are a little bit less stressful compared to the free-roaming wolves. So this is what I was able to piece together with a couple days of research. Still, this list is far from complete. Again, I wasn't able to determine the total testosterone levels of a hippopotamus, for example. There was only studies performed on fecal matter, probably because hippopotamus are mad deadly, and probably one of the deadliest animals in Africa. From what I remember doing research on the deadliest animals on the world. A giraffe I wasn't able to determine. And now I realize that I completely forgot about the crocodiles. You know, the Nile crocodiles are probably full with testosterone, but I'll do a little bit of research and overlay that on the screen. I'll rank them accordingly if I can find the data. If I forgot or missed your favorite animal, my sincere apologies. Feel free to contribute to this video down below in the YouTube comment section. And if you are a little bit disappointed, like I was, that a silverback gorilla or a grizzly bear or a rhinoceros or a wolf has very low total testosterone levels, don't be disappointed. It just means that you can one-up them, not in a fight, but if you were to sit in a group and you were all going to do your blood work analysis, then you can show that your total testosterone levels are much higher than theirs. You're still going to get devoured if you were to end up in a fight with one of these animals. So I'll leave it here, guys. This was a very fun video to kind of piece together. I had a lot of fun doing research for this one. Hopefully it gives some traction here on YouTube because it's a very, very, very niche content. I'll leave it here. Thank you guys so much for watching. You can find everything that I'm associated with down below in the YouTube description section. All of my sponsors and affiliates are there. And if they are not there, you can find them on my website, vigoroussteve.com. I'm always available for consultations. You can find the rates on my website as well. If you need some personalized advice to raise your total testosterone levels by any means necessary, I got your back. Vigorous crew, you guys know what to do. A front double bicep for you guys. Not quite silverback gorilla, but it's actually closer to a royal Bengal tiger. And this is where I got all those stretch marks from, right? Wrestling with royal Bengal tigers. See you guys in the next video.